All right, everyone, get ready, because today we are diving headfirst into some major EU action, a new regulation all about sustainable products.
Big changes coming, for sure.
We're talking a complete revamp of how things are designed, made, used, pretty much everything you buy.
Yeah, this is a big one. It's called officially Regulation EU 2024-117 May 1. And what's interesting is it's not just about making things a little greener.
Right, like tweaking a few things here and there.
It's about really shaking things up. This is about getting rid of that old take, make, toss system,
Yeah.
forcing everyone towards a real circular economy.
And that's a huge goal, really ambitious, especially when you think about how much this covers. We're not just talking electronics, which we know the EU has tackled before.
Right.
This is, what isn't included? Furniture, clothes,
Yeah.
even the parts that go into other products.
Exactly. Even those in-between parts, what they call intermediate products, those are under scrutiny now. They're closing loopholes,
Yeah.
Some industries kind of got away with things under the old rules.
Slip through the cracks.
Exactly. And even for the industries already dealing with eco-design stuff, well, it's about to get a lot stricter.
So let's get specific. What does this mean in reality? What are the big noticeable changes?
So one of the most, I'd say, revolutionary parts of this whole thing is this idea of a digital product passport.
Okay, I've heard that term thrown around, but
It's basically like, imagine a digital twin for every product.
okay.
And it's packed with info. Environmental impact, repair instructions, you name it.
All right, I have to admit, that's a cool concept, like having X-ray vision into what you're buying. But for those of us who aren't, die-hard environmentalists, why does this matter? What's the big deal?
Transparency, that's the key. Imagine you're buying a shirt, right? You've got two that look the same. But
Yeah.
with this passport, boom, you see instantly which one had a lower carbon footprint, which one used less water.
Oh, I see.
It lets consumers make real choices, informed choices.
And I'm guessing it pushes companies to, actually step up their game on the sustainability front. Because now consumers can see right through any BS, any greenwashing.
You got it.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond just the environmental stuff, too. Think about it. Easy access to repair manuals
Oh, that's a good point.
makes fixing things so much easier instead of just tossing them out.
Right.
This passport could totally change the game, get people repairing, reusing more.
And speaking of waste, this regulation goes after something that's always been frustrating.
What's that?
Companies destroying perfectly good products.
Ah, yeah.
What's the deal with that?
It's more common than you'd think, honestly.
Really?
It's all about protecting their brand image or sometimes just avoiding the hassle of dealing with extra inventory.
Interesting.
But this regulation, it's not letting them get away with it.
So no more, designer brands burning piles of unsold handbags.
That's the idea. The EU is phasing in this ban, can't destroy unsold consumer goods. They have a whole list. Starts with certain types of products and expands over time.
Wow.
And they're being smart. They're putting in stuff to stop companies from just, paying someone else to do the destroying for them.
It's like they're trying to predict all the ways companies might try to get around this.
Right. Closing loopholes before they even appear.
But before we get too deep into this ban, let's rewind a bit to those digital product passports. They sound really complicated. I have to wonder, how are they going to actually make this work? There are so many products out there.
Yeah, it's a massive project, that's for sure. But they're not trying to make it overly burdensome, especially for the smaller businesses out there.
Okay, that's good.
They're really relying on systems and standards that already exist.
Oh, so they're not reinventing the wheel completely.
Exactly. Like the EU's energy label system, they're building on that kind of thing.
It is more about evolution, not revolution.
Yeah, right. Exactly. The real hurdle is going to be making sure the info in these passports is accurate.
Right.
And that it's easy to get to.
Makes sense.
So the regulation's really clear about who's responsible for what in the supply chain.
Okay.
Everyone's got a role to play here. Manufacturers, online platforms, the whole 9 yards.
And speaking of online platforms, that makes me think, they haven't always been the best about providing reliable product info.
True.
Or, backing up sustainability claims from sellers on their sites.
Right. It's been a bit of a free-for-all.
So how does this regulation change things for them?
This is where it gets interesting. Basically, they're putting online platforms on notice. No more special treatment.
Ooh,
They've got to play by the same rules as traditional stores now.
interesting.
When it comes to enforcing this regulation, they're on the hook.
So no more turning a blind eye to like shady products or exaggerated eco-claims.
Exactly. They have to cooperate with the authorities, the ones doing market surveillance. The authorities can demand product info, do checks, even take action against products that aren't following the rules.
Wow.
And it doesn't matter where the product came from originally.
That's a big deal then. Seems like a big win for transparency for us as consumers. But let's circle back to those companies destroying perfectly good stuff. We talked about the ban, but what about before that kicks in? Are companies just supposed to, like, flip a switch and change overnight?
Well, that's where the transparency thing comes in again. Starting in 2026, companies, they'll have to publicly report how much they're destroying,
Really?
even before the ban is fully in effect.
Wow, that's putting them in the hot seat, putting those numbers out there for everyone to see. What do you think, how are businesses going to react to that?
It's definitely going to ruffle some feathers, but honestly, that's kind of the whole point. Transparency, it's a powerful motivator. The EU figures if they shine a light on this wasteful behavior, it'll force companies to find other solutions.
Right, because who wants to be the company everyone knows is destroying tons of stuff?
Yeah.
So instead of destroying things, maybe they'll get better at managing their inventory.
Right, or maybe they'll donate more, or who knows, maybe even produce less in the first place.
It's like getting ahead of the greenwashing problem.
Yeah.
Make them show their cards now, and it forces them to actually improve.
Exactly. And this whole transparency thing, it's also key for another big part of the regulation, making things easier to repair.
Oh, right. We haven't touched on that much yet.
It's a huge piece of this circular economy puzzle.
Yeah, definitely.
The regulation, it really pushes for products that are designed to be fixed,
Okay.
easier access to spare parts.
Right, because good luck finding those sometimes.
I know, right? Affordable repair services, too, and just more information available so people can keep their things running longer.
So it's not just about products that can physically last longer, but making it realistic for people to actually fix them.
Exactly. And this loops back to those digital product passports. Imagine you need to fix something, you open up the passport, boom, everything you need is right there.
That would be amazing. No more scouring the internet for instruction manuals or trying to figure out which parts will work.
Exactly. It's about giving consumers the tools they need to keep their products going strong for longer.
And that creates more business for companies who are in the repair and remanufacturing game.
Right. Absolutely. The regulation gets that. To have a real circular economy, you need a thriving repair sector.
This whole thing is like they're trying to shift our entire mindset. We're so used to thinking of things as disposable.
I know, right?
But this is about seeing products as resources. You can use them again, repurpose them,
Keep them in circulation.
keep them going as long as possible.
Exactly. And it's not just about changing how consumers think.
Right.
This regulation sends a clear message to businesses. If you're not thinking about sustainability, about building a circular system, you're going to get left behind.
Because those companies, the ones who get it, they're going to have a real advantage in the future.
For sure. It's not just a niche thing anymore, sustainability. It's becoming essential for any business that wants to succeed.
It's not even just about following the rules anymore.
Right. The companies that really prioritize sustainability, those are the ones who are going to save money in the long run.
And they're the ones who are going to appeal to consumers, attract investors.
Absolutely. It's that whole win-win situation.
Yeah.
Doing good while you're doing well.
Exactly. But we can't forget about the role governments play in all of this, right? That's where green public procurement comes in, yeah.
Ah, yes. The EU isn't just talking the talk here. They're walking the walk.
Right, putting their money where their mouth is.
Exactly. This regulation really strengthens the EU's commitment to green public procurement.
Okay.
So in simple terms, it means when the government needs something, they're going to prioritize products and services that meet certain environmental standards.
And that's a big deal because the EU, they buy a lot of stuff.
Oh, huge buying power. So by using that leverage, they can really drive demand for sustainable products.
Makes sense.
Encourage innovation, help green businesses grow. It's setting an example for others to follow.
It does sound like the EU is really pulling out all the stops with this regulation. But, whenever you have big, ambitious plans, there are always going to be some bumps in the road.
Yeah, true. Big changes always come with some growing pains. So what are some of the hurdles the EU might face with this regulation?
Well, one of the biggest ones is going to be making sure everyone's actually following the rules. And that's tricky with a market as big and varied as the EU.
Right, 27 different countries, all with their own ways of doing things.
Exactly. And the regulation really emphasizes that national authorities need to cooperate. But coordinating across that many countries each with its own priorities, its own systems. That's no easy task.
Sounds like a logistical nightmare, honestly. How do you even begin to get everyone on the same page when it comes to enforcing something like this?
Well, the regulation, it does lay out a plan. There's a whole framework for sharing information, for taking action together, that kind of thing.
And the European Commission, they're going to have a bigger role in supporting national authorities, making sure everyone's working together, providing resources, sharing expertise.
So it's about building up everyone's capacity, not just dictating from above.
Exactly. And then there's another layer of complexity, which is, well, global supply chains.
Right, because nothing's made in just one place anymore.
Exactly. Trying to track a product's journey from raw materials to the finished thing you buy.
It's like a puzzle.
A really tangled one, especially with online sales, international manufacturing. It gets messy.
So how can they even know where something really came from?
Yeah.
Or what the real environmental impact was?
And that's where our friend, the digital product passport, comes back in. Remember how it tracks the product's entire journey?
Right.
Well, that digital record, it increases transparency and accountability.
Okay, I see.
Makes it much harder for companies to hide unsustainable practices.
Or to, like, fudge the numbers when it comes to their environmental impact.
Exactly. They can't just make claims anymore. They've got to back it up.
It's like a digital trail of breadcrumbs, following the product every step of the way. From creation to, well, I was going to say grave, but hopefully it's more like cradle to cradle with this whole circular economy thing.
I like that.
But even with all these measures in place, I mean, let's be realistic. Some companies are going to try to find ways around the rules.
Oh, for
Especially
fun.
those operating in parts of the world where the regulations aren't as strict.
Exactly. And that makes you wonder, right? Will all this effort from the EU actually make a real difference if other countries aren't doing the same?
Yeah. Is this going to be a solely European thing? Or could it actually have a wider impact?
That's the big question, isn't it? But here's the thing. The EU, it's a huge market.
Yeah.
And their regulations, they often end up setting the standard for businesses around the world. Because a lot of companies, they're going to realize it's just easier to adopt these sustainable practices globally.
Right, instead of having to make different products or systems for different places.
Exactly. It's more efficient that way. So, in a way, the EU is leading by example here.
Hoping others will follow suit.
Precisely. And we've seen it happen before, too. Think about the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR.
Right, everyone was talking about that a few years ago.
It had a huge impact on data privacy laws all over the world.
That's true.
And with this new regulation, we're likely to see the same thing.
So companies outside the EU might even jump on board early.
Oh, absolutely. Because more and more consumers care about sustainability.
Right, they want to buy from companies that align with their values.
Exactly. And investors, too. They're looking for companies that are thinking long-term. And sustainability, that's a big part of that.
So companies that embrace these changes early on, they're actually setting themselves up for success.
Exactly. It's not just about avoiding fines or penalties anymore.
It's about attracting customers,
Yeah.
attracting investors.
It's about being a leader. And let's not forget about the power of us, the consumers. With these digital product passports, we're going to know more about the things we buy than ever before.
And we can use that information to make better choices.
Exactly. So even beyond the EU, this could really shift demand towards more sustainable products.
Because at the end of the day, we vote with our wallets.
That's right. We can choose to support the companies that are doing the right thing.
This has been a fascinating deep dive, really insightful look at this new regulation. We've covered so much, it's hard to know where to even begin.
It's a big one, that's for sure. Lots to unpack.
So if there's one key thing you want our listeners to remember from all of this, what would it be?
I think it's this. The EU is drawing a line in the sand with this regulation.
It's a statement.
They're serious about building a more sustainable future, a more circular economy, and this is a major step in that direction.
And this is something that's going to have ripple effects beyond just the EU. It's going to impact businesses, consumers, the planet, all of us, really.
It really drives home the point that we all have a role to play in creating a more sustainable future.
It's definitely a whole new ballgame. This regulation feels like, a real turning point for sustainability.
It's huge. I mean, this is a major step toward creating a circular economy. It's about changing how we, consume things, how we make things, how we get rid of things. It's about lessening our impact on the planet.
And this is probably going to have impacts beyond the EU, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. This will probably change how things are done globally, not just in Europe.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. Now, here's something to think about. This whole thing is about giving people the information they need to make better choices, right? More eco-conscious choices.
Mm.
But will that be enough? Will people actually change their buying habits just because they have more information?
That is the question.
It is. Or will sustainable design just become another box for companies to tick to, follow the rules? I guess we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out.
A lot to consider. Thanks for joining me today and breaking down this very complex and very important regulation. And for everyone listening, stay tuned because this is just the beginning.